The truth is not a destination that the human mind aspires to. It is an uncomfortable accident on the way to something much more primitive: tranquility. Observe how your brain actually works, not how you've been taught it works, but how it operates when no one is watching. It is not an organ designed for enlightenment. It is a survival machine whose only mandate is to keep you alive and, above all, to keep you calm. The truth, when it appears, is simply a tolerated side effect, never the primary goal. Your mind constructs narratives, not precise maps of reality. And those narratives have a single purpose: to allow you to sleep at night without the weight of existence crushing your chest. This is not abstract philosophy. It is neurobiology disguised as destiny. Every day, your brain performs millions of operations aimed at filtering, distorting, and reorganizing the information you receive, not to bring you closer to the truth, but to keep you away from panic. When you face data that contradicts your worldview, your prefrontal cortex does not light up with curiosity. It lights up with alarm. The limbic system, that primitive region we share with reptiles, detects the threat before your consciousness even registers the conflict. And then the neutralization process begins. You are not thinking. You are being protected from thinking. Psychology calls it cognitive dissonance, but that clinical term hides the brutality of the mechanism. Imagine that each belief you hold is a piece of architecture in the building of your identity. Every time an uncomfortable truth hits that building, you don't examine it to determine if it is valid. You assess it based on the structural damage it could cause. If accepting that truth requires demolishing entire sections of who you believe you are, your mind instinctively rejects it. Not because it is false, but because it is costly. The price of truth is measured in discomfort, in the need to rebuild, in the implicit admission that you were wrong. And your brain, that pragmatic and cowardly organ, prefers to live in a stable lie rather than in a truth that requires work. Consider the phenomenon of confirmation bias. It is not simply a tendency to seek information that supports your beliefs. It is a complete architecture of self-deception. Your mind does not passively wait for data to arrive and then evaluate it fairly. It actively goes out to hunt for evidence that confirms what you have already decided to believe. It is a corrupt detective planting evidence in its own investigation. When you find information that supports your worldview, your brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. Biologically, confirming your prejudices feels exactly the same as eating chocolate or having sex. Your mind chemically rewards you for ignoring the truth. The system is designed so that comfort becomes addictive. The history of humanity is not a progressive march towards the truth. It is a catalog of resistances against it. Galileo was not persecuted because his observations were incorrect. He was persecuted because they were disturbing. The Earth revolving around the sun was not just an astronomical fact. It was a demolition of man's place in the cosmos. It was uncomfortable. Semmelweis, the doctor who discovered that doctors should wash their hands to prevent infections, was not celebrated. He was ridiculed and eventually committed to a mental asylum, not because his data were flawed, but because they implied that doctors, with their unwashed hands, had been killing patients. That truth was too costly to accept. It was easier to destroy the messenger than to examine the message. This pattern repeats with almost mathematical consistency. Every time a truth threatens the comfort of a power structure, an entrenched belief, or a convenient narrative, the collective instinct is not to investigate. It is to crush. The Inquisition, burning heretics, was not protecting God. It was protecting the psychological comfort of a system that could not afford doubts. The 19th century scientists, rejecting the theory of evolution, were not defending biology. They were defending the reassuring narrative that man was specially created, not that he evolved from clay. The truth did not lose those battles because it was weak. It lost because it was uncomfortable. And this takes us to an even darker territory. On an individual level, this mechanism operates with the same brutality as on a historical level, but with an additional characteristic. Self-deception is invisible to the person practicing it. You do not experience your confirmation bias as bias. You experience it as clarity. When you ignore evidence that contradicts your beliefs, you do not feel that you are being intellectually dishonest. You feel that you are being reasonable, that you are applying appropriate skepticism. The mind is an exceptional magician. It shows you the trick while executing it, and yet you cannot see how it works. Think about the last time you changed your mind about something significant. Not about trivial preferences like pizza versus tacos, but about something fundamental. About politics, about religion, about some central aspect of your identity. If you are honest, you will recognize that it was not a pleasant process. It was not a luminous revelation where the truth set you free. It was heartbreaking. It was like losing a limb. Because what you were really doing was amputating a part of your previous identity. And your mind resisted every step of the way, not because it was stupid, but because it was functioning exactly as it was designed, protecting your psychological stability at any cost. Psychologist Solomon Asch conducted experiments in the 50s that revealed this dynamic with chilling simplicity. He placed a subject in a room with several actors pretending to be participants. He showed them lines of different lengths and asked them to identify which were the same. The answer was obvious. One line was clearly longer than the other, but the actors, following instructions, gave the incorrect response. And then something fascinating and terrible happened. The real subject, faced with unanimous but false consensus, began to doubt their own eyes. In a significant percentage of cases, the subject ended up agreeing with the group, claiming that two lines of obviously different lengths were the same. They were not consciously lying. Their perception had adjusted. The comfort of belonging to the group outweighed the truth of their own senses. This is not a minor defect in human software. It is a core feature. Group membership, historically, meant survival. An isolated human in the African savanna was a dead human. The mind evolved to value social consensus over perceptual accuracy, because for most of our evolutionary history, being wrong with the group was safer than being right alone. Your brain still operates under that ancestral logic. When faced with a choice between truth and belonging, belonging almost always wins. Not because you are weak, because you are optimized for tribal survival, not philosophical accuracy. And this intensifies when we move from the laboratory to the dynamics of institutional power. Philip Zimbardo designed the Stanford prison experiment in 1971 with a simple question. What happens when you give arbitrary power to ordinary people? He divided college students into guards and prisoners in a simulated prison in the university's basement. The guards received uniforms, batons, and authority. The prisoners received numbers and humiliation. The experiment was supposed to last 2 weeks. It had to be canceled after 6 days. The guards, normal young men with no history of violence, began to devise elaborate psychological punishments. They deprived prisoners of sleep, forced them to perform degrading tasks, subjected them to ritualized humiliations. Not because they were inherently sadistic, but because the system had given them permission. The power structure had redefined what behaviors were acceptable, and their minds instantly adjusted to that new reality. The disturbing thing about the Stanford experiment is not that some people are evil. It is that the context can transform anyone. The guards did not enjoy cruelty despite the system. They enjoyed cruelty because the system had normalized it. And here is the direct connection to our thesis. Those guards did not experience moral conflict. Their minds did not scream at them that they were committing abuses. They whispered to them that they were maintaining order. The internal narrative had been adjusted to preserve their psychological comfort. Torturing someone would be unbearable if you had to face the truth of what you are doing. But if we redefine torture as discipline, as maintaining order, as fulfilling your role, then the mind can carry it out without internal friction. Comfort is not achieved by avoiding terrible actions. It is achieved by redefining them until they no longer seem terrible. This ability of the mind to rationalize the irrational, to normalize the abnormal, becomes even darker when we examine the Milgram experiment. Stanley Milgram sought to understand how ordinary German citizens had participated in the Holocaust. His experiment was brutally simple. A participant was instructed by an authority figure, a man in a white coat, to administer electric shocks to another person whenever they made a mistake in a memory task. The shocks started at 15 volts and escalated to 450 volts, a level marked as dangerously lethal. The person receiving the shocks was an actor pretending to experience increasing pain, screaming, begging for the experiment to stop, eventually falling silent. The question was, how many participants would go all the way? Psychologists predicted that less than 1% would. They were catastrophically wrong. 65% of the participants managed the maximum download, not because they were monsters, because an authority had told them to continue. What Milgram discovered was not that humans are inherently cruel. He discovered that the human mind is designed to transfer responsibility. When a legitimate authority assumes the moral cost of an action, the executor's mind is freed from conflict. Participants who administered lethal shocks showed signs of extreme stress. They sweated, trembled, some cried, but they continued. Not because they enjoyed the suffering. They continued because the authority structure had absorbed the responsibility. In their minds, they were not torturing anyone. They were following instructions, and following instructions is comfortable. Questioning authority is uncomfortable. The truth of what they were doing was unbearable. So the mind built an alternate narrative where they were simply obedient participants in an important scientific experiment. The comfort of that narrative outweighed the reality of the screams. These experiments are not historical curiosities. They are mirrors. Every day, in less dramatic but structurally identical ways, your mind performs the same operations. You work for a corporation that you know pollutes, but you need the salary. Your mind constructs a narrative. Everyone does it. Change must come from above. Your individual participation is insignificant. The truth is that you are an accomplice. The comfort is that you can sleep without feeling like one. You vote for politicians whose policies you know will harm others, but will protect your interests. Your mind constructs a narrative. It's complicated. The economy is a priority. The other side is worse. The truth is simpler and more brutal. The comfort of that manufactured complexity shields you from it. Schopenhauer understood this with a clarity that still hurts. He wrote that the human intellect is not an instrument of truth, but an instrument of will. The mind does not exist to discover reality. It exists to serve the will to live, and that will has no interest in truth, except when it is useful. The intellect is a servant, not a master. It rationalizes decisions that the will has already made. That is why you can know the facts about climate change and still drive a gasoline-consuming vehicle excessively. That is why you can know that the meat industry causes massive suffering and still enjoy a hamburger. It is not hypocrisy in the traditional sense. It is that your intellect is doing exactly its job, providing the rationalizations necessary for your will to continue unimpeded. Schopenhauer's will is blind and insatiable. It pushes forward aimlessly, without purpose, without goal, simply perpetuating itself. And the intellect serves it by constructing the necessary illusions to make that perpetuation tolerable. The illusion that you have control. The illusion that your actions have meaning. The illusion that the world is just. These are not truths. They are sedatives. They are the necessary lies that allow a conscious animal of its own mortality to get up every morning without collapsing under the weight of futility. Your mind is not hiding the truth from you because it is malicious. It is hiding it because you are too fragile to bear it continuously. And this is where cynical philosophy becomes useful, not as adolescent nihilism, but as a scalpel. The ancient cynics did not reject the truth. They rejected comfort. Diogenes, living in a barrel, masturbating in public, mocking Alexander the Great, was not being provocative for fun. He was demonstrating that all social conventions are constructions designed to make us comfortable, not to bring us closer to the truth. Civilization is not a triumph of reason. It is an elaborate system of distractions that allows us to ignore our animal nature. You work 40 hours a week, not because it makes intrinsic sense, but because the system needs your energy. You buy objects you don't need with money, You don't have to impress people you don't like, because consumption is the distraction the system offers in exchange for your obedience. And your mind cooperates with this deception, because the alternative, confronting the fundamental absurdity of modern existence, is too uncomfortable. Contemporary society has perfected this art of sleep-inducing. You have infinite entertainment in your pocket, a dopamine machine precisely designed to capture and monetize your attention. Every app on your phone was created by teams of behavioral engineers whose sole job is to make it slightly more difficult to stop using it than to continue. You are not freely choosing to spend hours scrolling through content. You are being orchestrated by algorithms that understand your psychological vulnerabilities better than you do. And it works because your mind prefers constant stimulation over silence where the truth might emerge. Boredom has become the most feared state, not because it is painful, but because in boredom, without distractions, you might start asking uncomfortable questions about how you are living. Social networks are not platforms for connection. They are validation laboratories where your mind constantly seeks the comfort of external recognition. You post a carefully curated image of your life, not to document reality, but to build a narrative that is more tolerable than the truth. You wait for likes, comments, those small injections of validation that confirm the person you pretend to be is acceptable. And when they arrive, your brain releases dopamine. The reward system activates exactly as if you had achieved something genuinely meaningful. Your mind does not distinguish between real validation and digital validation. It only registers comfort achieved, reduced anxiety, continuing the behavior. You are being trained, like a rat in a conditioning experiment, to confuse the appearance of connection with real connection, the appearance of achievement with real achievement. And when reality inevitably filters through these defenses, when something genuinely disturbing happens, observe how your society reacts. Not with honest investigation, with tribalism. People instantly divide into sides, not based on evidence, but on group identity. If a controversial political event occurs, you don't ask what really happened. You ask what your tribe says happened. And then you adopt that narrative as truth. Not because it is accurate, because it is comfortable. Because it allows you to stay within the group, where you are protected, validated, where your identity is secure. The truth becomes irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the narrative that protects your tribal belonging. The media understand this perfectly. They do not sell information. They sell confirmation. Every news source is designed to satisfy the confirmation bias of its specific audience. They tell you exactly what you need to hear to feel correct, to feel that your worldview is validated. They do not challenge you. They comfort you. And you return day after day, not because you are learning, but because they are feeding your need for cognitive comfort. The truth would require you to consume information from sources that challenge your beliefs, that make you feel uncomfortable. But your mind does not want that. It wants the warm validation of hearing its echoed voice repeated with authority. Even education, which supposedly exists to cultivate critical thinking, is infected by this mechanism. Students do not seek knowledge. They seek credentials. The university is not a place where the world is questioned. It is a place where one learns which truths are socially acceptable in certain contexts to advance economically. A student who truly questioned the fundamentals, who rejected the convenient truths of their discipline, would not be celebrated as a critical thinker. They would be marginalized, because institutions, like the minds that comprise them, are designed for stability, not for truth. A genuinely truth-oriented education system would produce revolutionaries. It produces administrators. This leads us to an even more disturbing conclusion. If your mind is not seeking the truth but comfort, then most of what you consider knowledge is not knowledge. It is stabilized narrative. They are the stories you tell yourself to make your existence tolerable. And this applies to everything. Your sense of personal identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are, is not an accurate record of your history. It is an edited narrative where you are the understandable protagonist. The moments when you were cruel, selfish, cowardly, your mind recontextualizes them, softens them, justifies them, or simply erases them. You are not consciously lying. Your memory is actively being rewritten by the same mechanism that protects your psychological comfort. You remember the past not as it was, but as you need it to be for your current narrative to work. Your relationships operate under the same distorted logic. You do not love people as they truly are. You love the versions of them that your mind has constructed. You project onto them the qualities you need them to have so that your narrative about the relationship works. And when they inevitably fail to meet those projections, when the reality of who they really are penetrates your fantasy, you do not adjust your perception to accommodate the truth. You adjust the narrative to preserve comfort. You decide that they changed, that they betrayed you, that they were not who you thought they were. The simplest truth, that you never really knew them because you were too busy knowing them through the filter of your needs. That truth is too uncomfortable. It would require you to accept your own voluntary blindness. And when a relationship ends, observe how your mind rewrites the entire story. If you are the one ending the relationship, your mind emphasizes the faults of the other person, constructs a narrative where you were patient, reasonable, where you had no choice. If you are left, your mind constructs the opposite narrative. You were perfect. They were irrational. They didn't appreciate what they had. Both narratives are false. Both are comfortable. The truth that relationships are complex, that both contributed to the failure in specific and nuanced ways. That truth offers no comfort. It offers responsibility. And your mind rejects responsibility when it can reject it, because accepting it is uncomfortable. Even your ambitions, the goals you pursue, are not truly yours in the sense you imagine. They are products of social conditioning filtered through your need for validation. You want money not because money has intrinsic value, but because society has established money as a marker of success. And your mind needs the comfort of being successful according to external metrics. You want an impressive career, not because the work excites you, but because your identity requires you to be seen as competent, valuable, important. You pursue these things believing they are your authentic desires, but they are simply the desires that your social context decided you should have, internalized so deeply that they feel like your own. The truth of what you would want in the absence of all social pressure is inaccessible because you have never existed without social pressure. And here is the final twist, the darkest one. Even now, as you absorb this dissection of self-deception mechanisms, your mind is working to neutralize it. You are reading this and thinking that it applies to others, not to you. Or you are finding exceptions, special cases where your beliefs are different. Or you are intellectualizing the critique, turning it into an abstract concept that you can admire without applying it to your own life. This is precisely the mechanism in action. Your mind is detecting the threat that this information poses to your psychological comfort and is executing countermeasures. It is building the necessary narratives so that you can recognize the truth without having to change anything. Because changing would require something your mind is designed to avoid: sustained discomfort. Changing would require you to examine every belief, every relationship, every decision with brutal skepticism. It would require you to accept that the person you believe you are is mostly fiction. It would require you to live with constant uncertainty, because certainty is always a comfortable construct. It would require you to relinquish tribal validation, because the truth often isolates you from consensus. It would require you to accept full responsibility for every action without the protective rationalizations you normally employ. No one lives like that consistently. No one can. The discomfort of that level of honesty is biologically unsustainable. So, what is left? If your mind is designed for comfort, if self-deception is human nature by default, if even recognizing this does not free you from it, what are you supposed to do? The cynical answer, the only honest answer, is that you cannot escape completely. You cannot reprogram millions of years of evolution with willpower, but you can develop uncomfortable vigilance. You can learn to recognize when your mind is running its protection programs. You won't be able to stop them, but you will be able to see them. And in that seeing, in that momentary awareness of your own mechanisms of self-deception, there is something that approaches freedom. Not freedom to be perfectly rational, freedom to be honest about your irrationality. The truth will not make you happy. The truth will set you free from certain illusions, and that freedom will probably make you less happy, at least initially. Because happiness, as society defines it, is simply sustained comfort. It is the absence of friction between your desires and reality. But that absence of friction is achieved by distorting your perception of reality, not by changing reality itself. So pursuing the truth is, by definition, pursuing discomfort. It is choosing the pain of seeing over the comfort of voluntary blindness. And finally, inevitably, this dissection must turn its scalpel towards you, not towards humanity in the abstract, specifically towards you, reading these words at this moment. What narratives are you protecting right now? What truths about yourself are you avoiding because they require too much reconstruction? In what aspects of your life are you choosing comfort over honesty? What relationships do you maintain not because they are genuine, but because they are familiar? What work do you do not because it matters, but because it offers the illusion of security? What beliefs do you defend not because you have examined them, but because defining yourself would require effort? Your mind is already generating defensive responses to these questions. It is already building rationalizations. It is already seeking ways to neutralize this discomfort. Can you see it? Can you observe your own mind executing its protection programs in real time? That is the only genuinely radical act available, not changing who you are. That is probably impossible in any fundamental sense, but seeing who you are without the comforting filter of the narratives you have built, seeing the mechanism, seeing the comfort machine working, generating its illusions, protecting you from the truth. And in that seeing, without judgment, without trying to fix it, simply observing it with the same clinical detachment with which you would observe a scientific experiment, there exists something real. No happiness, no enlightenment, only momentary clarity, brutal and uncomfortable. The question is whether you can tolerate that clarity. The question is whether you truly want the truth, or if, as your mind suspects, you only want a more sophisticated form of comfort. The answer to that question will determine whether this text was a revelation or simply another form of entertainment. Only you know what it was, but be careful. Your mind could be lying to you about that too.